I just got off of a resolution meeting on Zoom, and one of the points that we were discussing that I thought would be good to sort of explain here in greater details for those of you who have children that have behavioral needs inside of the public school. One of the things that people need to keep in mind is that we're still working off of the 2004 version of IDEA, which means that we've made a ton of progress with regards to our understanding of behavior and functional behavior assessments and functional behavior plans as they're applied inside of the public school. But yet the law has not caught up with that. So therefore, the requirements on public schools on how to conduct an FBA, what goes into a good behavior plan, are really archaic and back in the proverbial Stone Age comparative to our knowledge now. So keep that in mind. The other thing that you need to always remember is that when people are asking the special instructional factors of whether your child has behavior that impedes his or her learning or the learning of others, and then that second component, does the child require a behavior plan? Those are purposefully separated into two different considerations for a reason, because there are children that have behaviors that impede their learning that are not violations of the student code of conduct that require a good behavior goal. And good behavioral services based upon the peer-reviewed, scientifically known approaches, strategies, therapies to address those things. But then the second component, if the behavior interferes with the learning of others, then at that point, if it's also a violation of student code of conduct, then a behavior intervention plan also should be considered as a companion to the necessity for a behavior goal and behavior services, which would fall into the educational performance category of social emotional learning. So they all go together. So at that point, when you're developing the IEP, trying to isolate a behavior goal, this is where social emotional or targeted behavioral assessments, like let's say an FBA, functional behavior assessment, helps us understand the ABC data, the antecedent, and the behavior. But then also having that along with, let's say, a targeted assessment like an AFLS or an ABLS or a BB map, targeted in some of those sections that would help us pinpoint and isolate the specific social emotional deficits that might be contributing to those antecedents so that we can address those. Because the behavior plan by itself is intended to be a temporary sort of insulation, more so for administration and for the teachers than it is for the child. It's an administrative or a school, an IEP acknowledgement, IEP team acknowledgement that the child cannot follow the student code of conduct. And because they cannot follow the student code of conduct as written, there needs to be sort of a protective shell around the child. That does not mean that the school doesn't have their full rights to suspend the child for up to 10 days before the manifestation meeting and, in-school suspensions. Doesn't mean that, but it also puts the school on notice that the child has these deficits. It also puts the school on notice that maybe we need to chill and have a little bit more patience. And that's where it's not that we're helping the child avoid consequences, but obviously the child does not have the requisite skills to be able to act appropriate in certain school environments or on the bus. So that behavior plan helps all the adults sort of understand that the child has those needs, okay? While the child is in that protective bubble, so to speak, of a behavior intervention plan, that's where we design good goals in order to work on skill acquisition. The skill acquisition helps reduce behaviors because what we're doing is we're teaching replacement skills that then help reduce those behavior responses, which then eventually helps hopefully negate or nullify the need for a behavior plan altogether. So you see how they all intended to sort of hook together like Legos. to where one is contributing to the other, and they're supposed to be companion pieces. And that's one of those things to where frequently schools are short-sighted when they're looking at behavior and going, well, the kid has a behavior plan, but then they have crappy or no behavior goals, and then they have no tangible peer-reviewed scientifically based services that will help target those antecedents and understand where those deficits are, so that we can teach replacement skills, which then reduce the behavior responses, which then puts us in a position to not require a behavior plan at all. This is how we need to start looking at designing behavior and behavior services for our kids within the public school realm.